Hi, everybody. It's Tim and Steve from Phantom History House. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you guys for being here for Phantom History House Call. Okay, so tonight we are talking about growing up psychic.
Yes, but somebody who knows that very well, Orion Michael, is here with us tonight, who is going to talk about what it was like growing up with his psychic abilities and how he had the support to hone them and become the psychic he is today.
Yeah, and I'm really interested in this conversation. I think it's going to be really, really interesting. And of course, he is the grandson of Noreen, who we've talked to before.
Yes.
Who's absolutely wonderful. So, hi, Noreen, if you're watching. So glad that Orion is with us. And we have a lot going on, everybody, here at Phantom History House. It's wedding season, believe it or not. Well, it's wedding all the time. We're starting to do wedding celebrations here at the Bed and Breakfast.
Yes, we've been pushing it like crazy on social media and in our newsletter, so apologies if you've seen it a million times. But we are excited that we have partnered with Simple Weddings here in Pinellas County, and they are going to be doing weddings here on our property.
That's right, and we have two events coming up. Right now, we are doing a summer giveaway because there are people that plan their weddings at the last minute, and so we are going to be giving away a free venue, meaning they can use Phantom History House for those 2 days at no cost, as a way to launch our business here with the weddings and to help out a couple out there. So if you know someone who's thinking about getting married this summer and they're looking for a venue, they could get a free venue from us. Just go to our wedding page at phantomhistoryhouse.com. There's information there about the free giveaway. And we're announcing the winner on this show, 7 o'clock next Wednesday, the 22nd.
Yes, and that's when we'll be talking to Douglas Ford, who is a horror author and a friend of ours, which leads us to our next big piece of news. Is that we are shared today on social media that we are going to be publishing an anthology book of short horror stories that are based on objects here inside Phantom History House.
Yeah, absolutely. So here is the cover. We're super excited about this. I'm going to show this right here. The wonderful Lynn Hanson, who is such a talented artist, created this cover of the book Phantom Menagerie, Stories Inspired by Phantom History House. And it's going to be 16 short stories all about horror stuff about objects in the house.
Yes, and what I love is that bottle that's on the cover is actually one of the bottles here on the shelves behind us. And one of the stories in the book is about the bottle wall. So it's very cool. It's one of the 16 pieces of unique creativity that we built here that inspired these writers.
Yeah, absolutely. And going back to the weddings for just a second, we're having a special wedding open house. We're celebrating the summer solstice. So we are having on Friday night, June 14th, 6 to 9, we're having sort of a date night here where we're hoping that potential wedding couples will come see the house, enjoy some desserts and some wine, and sort of have a fun date night.
Yeah, and that night, while you're here, if you fall in love with the house and decide to go ahead and book your wedding, you get $500 off the venue fee.
Huge savings. So anyway, a lot of exciting stuff. And there's one other thing we wanted to talk about. We watched a movie.
Gosh, we finally watched Rosemary's Baby. Fantastic.
I mean, we have been talking about watching this movie for a really long time.
For a couple of years.
And I was kind of scared too. And then finally we're like, okay, well, let's do it because it's such a classic. It was really good. It was scary. It was really scary, everybody.
Well, it was more psychological than scary.
Which is the kind of scary I like.
Yeah, we both had weird dreams that night, and we were talking about it the next morning at breakfast. So,
yeah,
like this is a brand new movie. It came out in the 60s. But I heard that there was a recent remake, and there's going to be I think it's a Netflix series related to it coming out very soon as well. So we timed it perfectly.
Okay. Well, anyway, that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen it, where is it? Netflix, or where did we see it?
Paramount Plus.
Okay. Anyway, we enjoyed it. So back to the topic at hand.
Yes.
Tonight we're talking to Orion Michael about growing up psychic.
Yes, absolutely.
Let's bring him on. Absolutely.
Hey, Orion, how are you?
What's up, guys?
So good to see you. And just to let everybody know, we actually got a chance to meet you in person during the Psychic Fair up in Dunellen back in February. And I had you as a guest on the Phantom History podcast recently. So really appreciate you letting us bother you for one more of our projects here tonight to talk about what it's like growing up as a psychic.
You guys can bother me anytime.
Well, thank you.
So why don't you just sort of introduce yourself, give us the basics about where you are and a little bit about yourself.
So my name is Orion Michael. Orion, the name, of course, based off of the constellation, was given to me by my grandmother, Noreen. Fun fact, I was supposed to be Joe the Fourth. Both my mom, my grandparents, even my dad, but no, that's not happening. And Michael, my middle name, was originally supposed to be my name, but Michael actually was the angel Michael. I thought that was very interesting. Also a name given to me by my grandmother and my parents. But I'm here in central northern Florida, not too far from the Denellen Train Depot that we just did the psychic fair at, that you guys had mentioned. And I love this area. It's so spiritual and calm compared to where I'm from. It's just amazing.
Absolutely. And if you're watching tonight, thanks for watching. Please comment and let us know where you're watching. If you have any questions for Orion at any time, please type those into the comment section.
Yeah, to kind of get started off.
Oh, look, Kristen Torlini said, Kristen, so glad you're here.
Just to kind of get us started, I think this is what Kristen is actually asking as well. First off, my question, I've asked you this before for the Phantom History episode. Are you a psychic? Are you a psychic medium? How do you identify yourself?
As I explained in that podcast before, it is a very big umbrella. I don't characterize myself into one small, one subject. I can be a part of a lot. Being a psychic medium, at least in my definition, is just being like a medium between the other side, being able to talk to ghosts, see ghosts, stuff like that, of which I believe I can do. And then just being a psychic in general is just, in my opinion, having the connection, and it's very hard to pin down exactly what it is. It's a very big an envelope and umbrella to really try and define it. So I guess I'm more of a part of everything then.
and I think you're right. Anytime I have this conversation with someone who is psychic, it's they have like a corner of what is the psychic world for them, kind of a thing. So they have like there's these interesting columns. And this is a question I was going to ask you, and Kristen's asking this as well. How and when did you know you were psychic, and did it startle you or scare you when you first discovered it?
Oh yeah, it definitely scared me when I was younger. So when we're young, you can notice it in almost every kid. We're young, we don't have our own shield, our own block that we develop as we get older to kind of close that out so it doesn't freak us out all the time. Some people, they don't put that block up and they just live in it. I know a few like that. But the majority of us do. I definitely do. I don't want to see it all the time because it does freak you out. You just have a spirit just walk up on you, and it might scare the crap out of you. But when I was younger, now that I'm thinking about it, I remember a handful of times where I always wondered what I was seeing. I remember one time my mom had left the house. This was actually in the haunted house we lived in on the old airstrip area. It's right next to Buckingham Airfield in Florida. And I remember she left to go to the store. I got off the couch, and I remember looking up and just being surrounded by, I don't even know, there was like 50 to 100 orbs just surrounding me and spiraling in my vision. I didn't know what the heck was going on. It scared the crap out of me. I grabbed my phone, I ran outside, I called her. She didn't answer, of course. So she came back maybe a half hour later and was like, "What's wrong?" I told her, and she goes, "Oh, you're fine."
Well, which is interesting because that leads me to my next question is I have met your grandmother, and I know she is very in tune spiritually, intuitively, very psychic. Does this run in your family? Do your parents have this ability too?
So I am I think it's a fifth generation or fourth generation. I can never remember, but it definitely runs in the family. We all have our own abilities. Some just decided to pursue it while others didn't. Like my dad, he never decided to pursue it. I did. Even my older brother, he, even though him and I didn't grow up together, he still ended up doing it. We didn't even know each other growing up. He only found us like 3 years ago. He's a couple years older than me, but even he reads tarot and stuff like that. He has the abilities. So it definitely is a family thing.
Right. And, I would assume, based on what your mom's response was when you told her that you had, had this weird experience, and she was like, "Oh, you're fine." Was she able to offer you some guidance? You know, because I know I've heard so many times people are like, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know who to turn to. Did you have anybody to help you with that?
No, not at that time. It was funny is I actually, after I did the podcast with you, I had sent it and my parents watched it and of course they loved it. And he called me, my dad called me, he goes, "Hey, from that time of you getting possessed and everything, do you remember the ghost hunting team?" I was like, "No, I forgot about them." So this is a whole other story I've been saving for tonight to kind of add more to it. We had an actual ghost hunting team come to the house. So to anyone who doesn't know the story, I'll give a short version of it. We lived in a house on Delta Avenue in Lehigh Acres, Florida, and is right next to Buckingham Airfield. Now, we learned, the ghost hunters are the ones who actually learned this, that part of the old airstrip ran right through where the house was. And there was a spirit of a little boy in my room. Oddly, he was around my age, and he would possess me regularly. That you'll have to watch the podcast for the full details. But then there was his mom in the master, and then I had forgotten about it. There's a man entity with some sort of like big-eyed, big teeth, creepy face, according to my mom. She's the one who described it to me. Who would hide in the closet, in the master closet, and she would get scared to death over that. But the experiences started getting worse and worse and worse. So they hired a ghost hunting team to kind of figure out what the heck was going on. And now that I'm really thinking about it, I do very much remember they gave me some tips and tricks on how to keep them out, stop being possessed and everything. But I very much remember them being there. They investigated the house. I don't remember if we left that night or not. I was like 10, 12. So.
And to your point, you do go into a little bit more depth in this story in our conversation. And if anybody's watching and wants to hear that, if you listen to the episode of Conjuring Phantom History, where I have the full conversation with Orion about this, I think my comment that night when we had that conversation was like, I expected a lot of things during this conversation, but not for you to tell me that you were possessed regularly. So
yeah.
Definitely a shock for me that night. So you met this ghost hunting team and they kind of helped you, gave you a little bit of guidance. When was the first time you heard the word psychic?
Oh, man. Honestly, probably around the time I was gifted my first tarot deck by my grandmother, of which I still have. I very much read it. If you come anywhere where I'm reading at any fair or you call me or whatever, that's the first deck I always use. Okay. So I have like 15 other decks. That's always the first one.
And how old were you when you were gifted that?
12.
12. Okay. So pretty young. How did you handle this like in school? I mean, 12-year-olds, you're all about, playing ball or playing an instrument or, making friends. This is like another layer of something, it sounds like. How difficult was that for you as a kid?
Believe it or not very difficult at all. I was always told never to say anything. Obviously, it was just for my own sake. I didn't want to be bullied or anything because everyone knows how kids are, especially in school. I didn't want to be bullied or looked down on or someone thinking something's wrong. So I just never really said anything. My real close friends, like my friend Shane, who in the podcast I talked about when we investigated his house,
right?
He knew, but other than that, I never said nothing.
So you kind of kept it close. Obviously, your family knew you had these abilities, but you didn't share it, regularly. I think it was a conversation we actually had with your grandmother on this show, where she talked about how she would be at school or out and about, and she would see things, but she just couldn't acknowledge them. Is that kind of similar for you too?
Yeah, for the most part.
Wow, that would be really, but I guess challenging because they're there. But two, did you have to learn how to tell entities and spirits from physical people, or is it obvious for you?
Oh, it's definitely obvious.
Oh, okay. So there's no confusion for you.
No, there's not. It either scares me or it doesn't.
Yeah. We have another question on the chat from Kristen Tortellini. She says, you mentioned not allowing spirits in all the time. How do you shut them out and determine when to allow them in? Okay,
so this is going to be an explanation here. So It took me years to really perfect being able to just switch it off. How I did it, I don't have exactly a playbook. In all honesty, I probably just started ignoring it and I think the spirits and the entities around me just got an understanding of, I do not want to see you. You can be there all you want. I just do not want to see you. And I'm good for the most part. I get left alone. There's on occasion, especially here at my house, that sometimes they'll have a party in my living room. That's a story. It's a small one, but it is a story. But to be honest, it's just kind of developed over time. I've kind of learned how to just shut them out and not be completely freaked out about it. Now, sometimes they're there and I'll catch them out of the corner of my eye, or I'll look right freaking at them. Like, I literally just had an experience the other night. I don't remember if we talked about it on your podcast, but I had an experience where I seen this full woman floating in front of my door. Both my wife and I saw her, and oh boy, it scared the crap out of us.
I guess so. No, you did not mention that before.
Yeah. So I'll tell that story then. So God, it was like midnight, something like that. My wife and I are sleeping, and so where the door is, I have my bed, and you have the door. I've got to make sure y'all can see it on my camera. You have the door, have my bed. I'm on the far side. She's on the side closest to the door, and neither of us got good sleep, regardless. And she's having some sort of like crazy nightmare. She wakes me up, and I'm rolled over on my right. I roll to my left, and I look at the door, and sure enough, there's this full woman in white floating probably 3 feet off the ground. Looks at me, smirks, backs out the door, gone. Scared the crap out of her. My whole body like went up in chills, and I'm looking at her like, you saw that, right?
That is terrifying.
So does that mean that your wife also has these abilities, or is this just
very much so? She's a lot more powerful than she thinks. She's clairaudient, clairvoyant. I don't know. You'd have to ask her, but she sees them, she hears them. They're around all the time. She's still working on her skills of how to kind of block them out and ignore them. And she's kind of learning that from me, actually. She's always had these abilities, but with her childhood, she was never able to, it was never accepted in her childhood, like mine. So she's just really getting into it over the last, actually, you know what? Tomorrow's our 6-year dating anniversary. So over the last 6 years.
All right, very good.
Wow, congrats.
And I want to say, Kristen, I thought that was a really great question. I want to back up to something you said a minute ago. That's why I'm popping back in. You said that it's very clear to you if it's a real person or it's a spirit. You said something about it scaring you, whatever. But can you describe to us what it looks like to you when you see the non-person or the spirit?
In most cases, it is a very, very hard thing to describe, but it's like watching a television. It's 2D. It's not a 3D person. You know, every one of us, every person has an aura that they give off. And we almost have a sense to know that there's a person there. Most spirits, well, actually all spirits, at least in my opinion, they don't have one. And when you look at them, you can tell that it is not a person. Now, there are some apparitions that have been seen that you would think it's a freaking person, but it's not. And it's caught on camera and everything. I mean, there's hundreds and hundreds of those all over the internet. But
right. And you're right, they are all over the internet. You know, my TikTok feed is full of those because that's the kind of that I follow, and I've always want to see. I mean, it makes sense for, you know, my personality.
Yeah.
But that was a really good question, because I've always wondered that as well. You know, how do you know it's a spirit that's in your house and not somebody who broke in? But it sounds like to you it's very, very obvious, and to your wife as well.
Mm-hmm. It is.
So I know currently, I don't believe you have any children. You know, right now, right? You're not
Nope.
a dad. If and when that moment comes for you, you know, how open would you be to honing those skills for a child, or do you know yet? Does it depend on the child's personality? I know it's a very personal question.
I can tell you this very much. You know, as long as that kid is living and breathing, they're going to be just like me. So I'm going to be very open about it. But I'm probably going to do something similar to what my dad did in raising them, as far as, you know, being spiritual, because my grandmother will still be around, I'm sure. And then obviously I've learned from her. So I'm going to make sure my kid is understanding and knows. I mean, they're still going to be freaked out just like I was, but it's going to take time.
Yeah. But, you know, knowing that somebody understands what their experience, you know, goes so far, you know, when you can relate to somebody that, okay, I'm not crazy, I'm not imagining this, dad has had this experience, or I know somebody who has had this experience. We had a guest on, another friend of ours, a month or two ago, who talked about raising her daughter who is psychic, and she
Mhm.
had some amazing advice for parents. I kind of want to flip that a little bit around concerning you as a kid who grew up aware of these abilities. What would you say to a kid who is seeing these things and I can't quite understand? What would your piece of advice for them be?
Ooh, man. Honestly, it would be seek guidance from someone who understands. Yeah, it actually kind of reminds me. My grandmother said it best when younger folks like me, I'm 25, almost 26, go to psychic fairs. Even in younger kids, 16, 17, 10, they don't want to talk to their grandmother about this. They want to go to someone young. And I get a lot of kids and a lot of adults my age who sit at my table because they relate to me the best.
Right.
And I've at the last fair I did, I picked up a new friend. She's in her early 30s. And we get along really well, and I was able to really guide her and just put her on a path. And in one day, essentially, just my little bit of guidance was able to really help her. And she told me that. Um, but honestly, to someone young, I would seek some guidance from someone who understands, who truly understands. Not everybody does. There are gimmicks in this world, so.
There are, and in any profession, in any talent pool, you're going to find those. So that's one thing we pride ourselves here about Phantom History House is when we do have a psychic or medium come in, we have vetted them. We feel like they're legitimate. We feel like we kind of put them through the test a little bit because we want our guests to have that positive experience.
Mhm.
I also wanted to ask you, and it just fell out of my head. I'm just going to come back to my head in a second. But before I get to that, when somebody approaches you for like a psychic reading, for example, do you usually let them ask the questions, or is it more like I know exactly what you need, have a seat? How is that for you, or does it vary on the person?
Funny is, it's actually neither of those.
Oh, okay.
So typically, in most cases that at least in all of my cases and other readers that I know, they sit at the table. I introduce myself. They introduce themselves. Typically, I'll ask, "What brings you here today?" They tell me, "I just want some guidance or just walking by." Okay, cool. And I start drawing and flip them over, and whatever it says is what it says. Being a reader, you're a medium between spirit and our world, and whatever the cards say is whatever the spirit is channeling through me,
Right.
along with messages that might come into my head. So honestly, it's not that. Now, typically, most of my people who sit at my table, they do have questions right off the bat. I'll tell them, wait. You can ask if you want, but you can wait. Maybe it will answer it for you, and you don't have to say them. So it's a case by case.
It's very interesting. But I want to ask another question, Ryan. Because you grew up with this skill, this intuitive ability, do you feel like it gave you any helpful advantages as you were growing up as a young person? Was there something where you thought,
Uh,
"Oh, it really has helped me in my life to have this ability"?
yeah, actually, I can say, like I said earlier about being a psychic and psychic medium and all of those subterms being in a large umbrella, being an empath is also in that umbrella. An empath is sharing people's emotions. That allowed me to truly connect to people and really, really help them, with what they need. Of course, I would get all kinds of people. A lot of them really dealt with depression. I even dealt with depression when I was in my teens. But being an empath, it allows me to truly connect and understand people. And I think that's a lot of the reason why I am where I am, is because I'm able to really, truly help people. That's one of the vows my wife actually said, is because of how much I enjoy helping people. That's a lot of the reason why she married me, is how far I will go for somebody. It's astounding how far I will actually go for somebody.
Well, it's a wonderful quality that you're wanting to help so much. And you don't have to answer this question, but did these abilities, is this of how you connected with your wife when you guys met?
Um, yes and no. When I met her, I was dating somebody. So we were friends for a little while before, that ended. Some time went by, and her and I started dating. And long and behold, married for a while. But it was actually music that allowed us to bond. I played guitar. I went to her family. I went to her birthday party for 20. I think it was her 20th birthday party, and I brought my guitar and hung out and everything. They were asking me, "Are you her new boyfriend?" I was like, "No." The next party, I was.
Yeah, next year I will be.
Wow, the power of the musician.
Yeah, I get it. He's a musician. So that's an interesting point too. So many people have this idea in their head of what a psychic is. It's this person in a corner with a turban on their head, or it's the character from the Wizard of Oz in the carriage, that kind of thing. But you have hobbies, you have a day job. When you
it's not the only thing they are.
Exactly, it's not the only thing.
Yeah, of course.
The thing you are. So my question is, as you were growing up, as you're figuring this out, and you have this ability that some of your friends did not have, what were you doing? Were you playing ball? Were you playing the drums? Were you what were your interests as a kid?
A lot of my interest, I did a lot of, as much ghost hunting as I actually could. That's a big thing I love doing. But music has been a part of my life, my entire life. My dad's a drummer. I'm a drummer. If to anyone who hasn't noticed, everything behind me is all music related. The giant banner behind me is my favorite band. I've got stuff from Godsmack. I've got stuff from the blues band they have. I've got all kinds of things. Music is a huge part, and that's something I've always done growing up, aside from reading and stuff like that. That and a fun hobby I play called airsoft. I've been doing that since I was also 12, actually. I got my first one when I was 12.
Yeah, and to the point Tim made a little bit ago, you're well-rounded like other people. You have other interests, and you do this and you do that. And but of course, for the sake of what we're doing here, with the ghost hunting aspect, I remember when we talked before, you talked about investigating your friend's house when you were like 10, I think it was.
Yeah.
So excluding that, when was your first ghost hunt? And do you remember how old you were? Or I guess I should say paranormal investigation, not ghost hunt.
Ooh. Okay, so I guess I would have to have you specify, like with equipment or without?
Well, with somebody who had experience and knew what they were doing other than yourself. Either with or without.
To be honest, I don't actually know, because
Okay.
I've always just kind of done it on my own. My first actual investigation was the one I talk about in the podcast with my buddy.
Okay.
And I guess, come to think of it, I think the one where I actually had equipment and we were with professional investigators was when we were at the Riddler's Believe It or Not in St. Augustine a couple years back. That was probably my first legit one in a place that wasn't somebody's house.
Okay.
And then it's kind of spiraled since then. So
yeah, and that is an incredible place. If anybody watching, if you haven't been to the Ripley's Museum in St. Augustine, or St. Augustine in general, go. There's a lot to see there for those of us interested in this stuff. Another question that came through: have you ever encountered a reading that was unsuccessful, and are you able to connect with all spirits or just some? Good questions.
Ooh, unsuccessful reading. So the only unsuccessful readings are the ones where the person who sits at a table and is an extreme skeptic. And I normally kill him with kindness, and I'll kill him with facts. I had one sit at the table. He's an older guy, and he goes, "Well, I already knew all of this." And I looked at him dead in the face and went, "I didn't."
Valid point.
So he sat back in his chair and he goes, "Yeah, that's fair."
That's great.
He was good after that. But other than that, most readings are good. Because I read angel tarot specifically. I do regular tarot, but I do angel tarot. That kind of filters out the everyday. The difference, I think I described this in the podcast too, but the difference of regular tarot and angel tarot is regular tarot is the everyday, the day-to-day life, the general guidance. You get everything, good, bad, ugly, in the middle, whatever. Angel tarot is more of the people on a spiritual path or an enlightening path, or even I've had people who have just lost their husbands or children sit at the table. It's more of someone who truly needs me sits at the table. It's not just an everyday, oh, hey, let me just sit down and see what they say.
Yeah, let's see what's up and what direction I should go in.
Mm-hmm.
To her second question, are you able to connect with all spirits, and does it depend on what deck you're using or who you're with? How does that part work?
So there's a difference there. The tarot is the tarot. Whatever the tarot says is whatever the tarot says. I have one tarot deck that is it's a mediumship deck. It's called Talking to Heaven. Anyone comes through on that. Whoever's sitting at my table, it's a relative of theirs or a guardian angel, anybody. Anyone can come through that. Now, as far as my ability to directly connect to somebody, if I were to have somebody come up to me and go, hey, my grandmother died or my father died 2, 3, 4 weeks ago, typically then, my mind just immediately starts looking for them and remote viewing to them and just kind of seeing what they look like and see what they say. But sometimes they don't want to talk. I actually have a funny story about that it's a very good example of that. So for my birthday last year in June, my wife and I wanted to go to Mount Dora and investigate the Donnelly house. Well, Mrs. Donnelly, the one who runs the roost over there, I viewed her before we went, and she had black hair, went to here, and her eyes were freaking huge. She was pale white, and she typically stayed up in the second floor ballroom area. Okay. Well, funny thing is we never actually got to investigate because she totally screwed up our tickets.
Really?
I'm not even kidding. So I had the tickets pulled up, and my wife and I agreed, okay, let's go ahead and do it. So I booked the tickets for Sunday, it was a Sunday night. Well, we go there on the Sunday, and there's nobody there. So I call, and I get a call back 2.5 hours later, and she goes, we had you booked for Friday night. We tried to call you. I'm like, what? So we never got to go in there. When we were just there for the Blueberry Festival recently, I finally got to walk in there, and we were in there 30 seconds and we walked out. It was intense. So I don't think we're very welcome there. That's why. But
I was going to say, it sounds like that something kept you away. And to clarify, the Donnelly that you viewed is the late Mrs. Donnelly. She's not somebody who is living and working there presently, right?
Late. Yep. She controls the house. Very much so.
Which brings me to an interesting point that we did talk about when we chatted before was remote viewing. Tell me briefly, what is that and how does that work?
I will do my best to explain this. So remote viewing, which was used by the Nazis in World War II, is an ability a psychic can use to view places or entities or people with in their mind. Essentially, my version of remote viewing is being able to view entities and some places. I've never really tried places, but entities on the other side, spirits and everything. If we start talking like Mrs. Donnelly, for example, I viewed myself into the house. I put myself in the house spiritually, and I seen her. And I seen a couple other spirits, like a little boy that's there, and there's a man there. But I seen her, and I think the reason she had such big eyes is because she watches everything at all times. She runs the show. But that's my definition of remote viewing, is being able to view entities on the other side or the place that they reside in.
Which thank you for explaining that, because again, it goes back to that umbrella of what psychics are able to do, and some have abilities that others don't have, or you kind of discover later. I want to say hi to Vic, who has checked in on our chat. Hello, Vic. Good to see you. I know that we have already talked for almost half an hour. Before we wrap up, did you have any other questions you wanted to ask Orion before we said goodbye for the night?
I guess my only question I would have for you is, I'd like to ask, because it was similar to what we did before, do you have advice if someone's watching this and they're a younger person and they're growing up psychic, and do you have advice or just words for them that you would like to share?
Honestly, to anyone watching, keep doing what you're doing. We have the lovely thing called the internet. And the world we are, though it might be crazy, is very accepting of these things. The internet is a big place that you can research and find people of like-minded, like me as an example, and seek guidance, seek someone who has a similar experience, who can tell you how they did it, and it'll help you modify how you're going to do it.
And any advice on how to tell if the person you're connecting with online is legit and real? I mean, I know you have some intuition about that, but
yeah, that intuition is the only thing. That's really the only true way to know.
Yeah, we can always tell if somebody's being honest.
Yeah, go with your gut. I think we all.
Intuition. intuition is your gut feeling. So.
Yeah. Before we say goodbye, what is your next investigation, or do you have one planned yet? What is your?
I don't have anything yet.
Okay.
One of these days, I'll try and actually get back to that Donnelly house. My wife and I were just talking about it. But I don't have anything planned as of right now. Ghost hunting's kind of put on a hold for now because I've got like 3 businesses running. So
Yeah, you got a lot going on.
a
But
lot.
I will say this: we know that you're going to come visit us very soon, so I'm very interested to get your take on Phantom History House and what you
Yes,
think of what
I'm
we've done.
excited. I'm gonna bring some equipment. I'm gonna bring some my voice recorders, my EMF. I'll bring my camera. I'll just bring it all, and
Bring it all.
we'll mess around. We'll see what's going on.
Okay. Yeah, we've been told that there's a lot of interesting and very fun spirits here, so I'll be interested to get your take on it as well. But Orion, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us tonight. Again, if you want to hear more about Orion and his investigation of the Dunellen Train Depot, you can listen to the most recent episode of Phantom History, the podcast, and of course, hear our full conversation on Conjuring Phantom History. All that can be found on phantomhistory.com.
And if you joined our conversation late tonight, the recording is always up on the location wherever you're watching it. So you can go back after this is over and watch from the beginning. And if you thought this was interesting, which was really interesting, you know anybody that you think would be interested in watching it, let them know where the conversation is as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Remember, if you're looking for a getaway this summer, come see us at Phantom History House. We are up and running. We have our 4 bed chambers available for you. And you can also sign up for our newsletter and get up to date on who we're going to have on the podcast in the following weeks. And of course, on the next Phantom History House calls as well. And you'll be alerted about special rates and special events in our calendar as well.
And we do want to remind you that we are having a special summer wedding giveaway. And also we're having an open house on June 14th for prospective couples who might want Phantom History House as a wedding venue. So we encourage you to go to our website, phantomhistoryhouse.com, and go to our wedding page and check that all out.
Yeah, lots going on here. We're looking forward to it.
Thank you so
guys,
much, Ryan. Wonderful
hey
job.
guys, I got one more thing to add really quick.
Sure.
So the 2 videos that you did, the full interview and your short interview, watch the short one first. It is the best storytelling of that train depot and in general I've ever heard. The bits of my interview and everything, you guys are just amazing storytellers. And I just wanted to make sure to add that. Watch the short one and then watch the full one. They're both absolutely incredible. That's the order that I watched them in. Even though I did the interview, I watched it again. And of course, it's awesome.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. And yeah, the Phantom History episode is about 15 minutes and our conversation was about 45. So
yeah,
a little bit of a difference there. But thank you. That means a lot to me. I love storytelling and I love the style that I'm able to do that in. And I'm working on the next one, which will be out the next week or 2. So stay tuned. There's another episode coming out.
And everybody, thank you so much for watching. We'll be back next Wednesday. We're talking about horror authors with Doug Ford. Thank you, Orion, so much for being here with us tonight.
Thanks, guys.
All right. We'll see you soon.